They call it advice. Psychology calls it manipulation. Wake up. You've heard it before, haven't you? That soft, almost loving tone that says, I'm only saying this because I care. And you want to believe it because care is rare. Because when someone says they're trying to help, you want that to be true. But sometimes that kind of help isn't meant to lift you. It's meant to shape you, to make you smaller, easier to handle. Carl Jung once said that the most dangerous manipulations are the ones we can't see. The ones that wear the mask of love, of mentorship, of friendship. He warned that people who haven't faced their own darkness often try to control others instead of themselves. And they do it through words. Words that sound like advice, but act like a leash. You've met them. The person who always has something to suggest. The one who can't stand your chaos, your courage, your way of being. So they dress their discomfort as wisdom. They tell you to calm down, be realistic, play it safe. They tell you to stop dreaming so loud. And you start to wonder if they might be right. That's the moment it happens. The seed of doubt they planted in the name of guidance begins to grow. You shrink. You hesitate. You stop doing the thing that made you feel alive. But here's the thing most people never realize. Advice isn't neutral. It always carries the energy of the person giving it. If their heart is full of fear, they'll hand you fear wrapped as caution. If they crave control, they'll disguise it as concern. And if they truly love you, their words will give you back to yourself. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation. The moment you begin to live from your own center instead of someone else's script. It's not rebellion, it's self-respect. And sometimes, the quiet act of saying no to bad advice is the loudest declaration of freedom you'll ever make. Think about it. How many of your choices were actually yours? How many came from someone's good intentions? Your parents, teachers, friends, they all meant well, but meaning well doesn't make it right. Jung and Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, said something that fits perfectly here. He wrote that emotional awareness is the difference between reaction and understanding. When you're emotionally awake, you can feel the motive behind the message. You can sense when someone's words are meant to lift you or to keep you obedient. That's the hidden line between manipulation and true guidance. Manipulation drains your clarity. Guidance gives it back. Manipulation keeps you dependent. Guidance gives you wings. You can hear the difference not in what they say, but in how your body reacts. Right now, while you're listening, notice your breathing. If this message makes you feel tense, if your chest tightens, if you feel small, then somewhere, you've been carrying words that weren't meant for you, advice that clipped your wings, voices that made you forget how powerful you are. Pause for a second. You might even see their faces, the ones who told you were too much, too emotional, too sensitive. They were never describing you. They were confessing themselves. Here's the truth. Real advice doesn't shrink you. It expands you. It doesn't make you dependent. It makes you capable. It doesn't wound you under the name of honesty. It heals you through truth. When advice is real, you feel seen, not corrected. You feel understood, not managed. That's how you know it's love, not control. If you're still here, still listening, it means part of you already knows this. You've felt the sting of false kindness before. You've seen people use empathy like a hook, but you've also met the rare ones who speak, and your soul exhales. Keep those voices close. They're not trying to mold you. They're reminding you of your shape. And before we go further, I need to say this. If this is resonating with you, if you've ever felt trapped by someone else's version of your life, make sure you stay with me, because what comes next will change how you listen forever. You ready? Let's keep going. You've probably noticed how advice always comes dressed in the tone of authority. It starts soft, then slowly turns heavy, like gravity pulling on your chest. Someone tells you, I've been through this before, trust me. And you want to trust them, because experience sounds like truth, because you were taught that older, louder, or wiser voices deserve obedience. But Jung warned us about this exact moment. He said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. It's his way of saying, beware of advice that doesn't leave room for your soul. We live in a world addicted to opinion. Everyone's a life coach, a mentor, a prophet of certainty. But if everyone's talking, who's really listening? That's what Jung saw coming a century ago. A generation guided not by wisdom, but by noise. And the loudest voices often belong to the most unexamined minds. Jung and Goleman took this idea further when he said that emotional self-awareness is the foundation of true intelligence. He wasn't talking about IQ. He was talking about the ability to name your feelings before someone else names them for you. Because if you can't define your emotions, somebody else will, and they'll define them to their advantage. That's how manipulation works in the real world. Not with lies, but with labels. They'll tell you you're too sensitive when you set a boundary. They'll call you cold when you stop reacting. They'll make you question your natural emotional compass until you navigate by theirs. Goleman called that emotional hijacking. It's when someone triggers your feelings so they can steer your behavior. And the cruel part? Most of them don't even know they're doing it. They think they're helping. That's why it's so hard to spot, because it doesn't look like cruelty. It looks like care. But care without respect is control. So what does real advice look like? It's calm. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't need to be right. It doesn't demand you shrink so the other person feels tall. Real advice creates space, not walls. It meets you where you are, not where they think you should be. It makes you feel more yourself, not less. Think about the last time someone spoke to you and you felt truly seen. Maybe it wasn't poetic. Maybe it wasn't even clever. But it was honest. It didn't cut. It clarified. It didn't press. It invited. That's what good guidance does. It hands you back your keys instead of locking another door. Jung believed that kind of connection could only happen between two people brave enough to face their own shadows. Because if you don't know your darkness, you're projected on everyone else. And then your advice becomes confession disguised as concern. So the question isn't who's right. The question is who's awake. The awake ones, they give advice that frees you. The sleeping ones, they give advice that keeps you in their dream. And maybe that's why manipulation hurts so much. Not just because it steals your voice, but because it makes you doubt your intuition. Once you start thinking your inner voice is wrong, you're easy to guide anywhere. That's the real danger. It's not the words, it's the silence they leave behind. There's a story Jung used to tell his students. A woman came to him saying her husband always advised her for her own good. She said she wanted to follow his wisdom because he was a rational man. Jung asked, "And how does his advice make you feel?" She said, "Smaller." He smiled gently and said, "Then it's not wisdom. Wisdom makes space. That's the measure, isn't it? How it makes you feel. Not flattered, not obedient, but expanded." And here's where Goleman's work echoes that truth. He said emotional intelligence begins with empathy, but it matures with boundaries. Empathy without limits turns to absorption. You take in everyone else's feelings until you can't find your own. Boundaries, on the other hand, let you feel compassion without losing yourself inside it. So maybe the healthiest thing you can do when someone offers advice is to breathe and ask, does this belong to me or to them? Because not every opinion deserves a home inside your head. Not every suggestion is meant to be obeyed. Some are invitations to think deeper. Others are traps that keep you spinning in someone else's logic. Here's a truth that might sting a little. Most people don't want your freedom. They want your agreement. Freedom challenges their comfort. Agreement protects it. That's why they'll call manipulation help and control concern. It lets them sleep at night. But you weren't born to make others comfortable. You were born to stay conscious. The irony? Sometimes the best advice sounds like silence. It's the friend who listens and says, "You already know what to do." That sentence carries no ego. It doesn't want to shape your path, only remind you that you're walking it. That's the kind of wisdom both Jung and Goleman would call mature. Wisdom that trusts the other person's capacity to think, feel, and decide. Imagine if more people gave that kind of counsel. The world would feel lighter. Conversations would heal instead of humiliate. We'd stop mistaking control for care and obedience for peace. There's a quiet revolution hiding in those words. Learning to listen not for advice, but for energy. Because every sentence carries a signature. You can sense it. That invisible pulse underneath someone's tone. It's either rooted in love or in fear. You don't need a degree to tell the difference. Your nervous system already knows. When it's love, you relax. When it's fear, you tense. That's your compass. Trust it. Sometimes, though, the manipulator lives inside you. It's that inner critic who repeats other people's warnings long after they're gone. The one who says, "Don't try again. Don't stand out. Don't make a scene." That voice sounds like safety, but it's not. It's inherited fear wearing your own accent. And when you recognize it, you can finally answer, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm done living small." That's the moment Jung called integration. When you stop fighting the shadow and start understanding it, you realize even the manipulator was born from pain, not evil. And in that realization, the power it had over you dissolves. The world will keep offering advice. Some of it will heal you, some of it will harm you. The trick is learning to hear both without losing your own signal. Jung gave us the map, Goleman gave us the tools, but you have to drive. So here's a thought to carry with you. Real advice doesn't demand belief. It invites awareness. It doesn't tell you what to think. It reminds you that you can. It doesn't shrink your options. It expands your vision. Next time someone says, "I'm only trying to help," smile. Say, "Then help me trust myself." If they can't handle that, their advice was never meant for you. Because at the end of the day, the only voice you truly live with is the one inside your head. Make sure it speaks your truth, not someone else's comfort. That's what it means to wake up. Not to fight the world, but to stop mistaking control for care and start recognizing love when it's real. You know what's wild? We grow up thinking that wisdom always comes from the outside, from someone older, louder, more confident, more sure of themselves. But no one tells you how much of that so-called wisdom is actually projection in disguise. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they were, or as they fear to be. That's why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Because every time someone tries to mold you into something, what they're really doing is showing you what they couldn't become. We call it advice. Psychology calls it conditioning. And until you wake up to that, you'll keep living inside someone else's version of good. Think about the people who've told you what to do with your life, the ones who smiled while clipping your wings. They weren't always cruel. Sometimes they were scared of your light, scared of your chaos, scared that your freedom would make them question their cage. So they wrap their fear in sweet words and call it guidance. But underneath, what they really mean is, stay predictable. Don't grow faster than I did. Jung and Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, said that real maturity is the ability to recognize emotional manipulation before it runs your life. It's when you can look at someone's advice and ask, is this about love or control? That one question changes everything, because not every manipulator is evil. Some are just unhealed, repeating the same control they once survived. But awareness doesn't mean you have to absorb their pattern. You can understand it and still refuse it. That's the difference between compassion and compliance. And the beauty of it is this: you don't need to hate them to stop following them. You can love people deeply and still protect your peace fiercely. That's not rebellion, that's emotional intelligence in action. Now let's talk about the other side, the advice that heals. Because it exists too, the kind that doesn't shrink you, but stretches you. That doesn't tell you who to be, but reminds you who you are. It's the friend who looks you in the eyes and says, I know you're scared, but I also know you can do this. It's the mentor who gives you a key instead of a chain. It's the voice that doesn't try to fix you. It sits beside you until you remember your own strength. That kind of advice feels different in your body. It doesn't create anxiety. It creates clarity. It doesn't make you doubt yourself. It helps you return to yourself. Here's what people forget. The truth doesn't manipulate. It liberates, and that's how you can always tell the difference. Jung said that healing begins where the shadow is met with compassion. So maybe the next time someone gives you advice, you don't have to react. Just observe. Is this coming from their shadow or their light? Because people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. And when you realize that, you stop trying to get validation from those who can't even see their own reflection. You stop explaining your dreams to people who've stopped dreaming. You stop asking for direction from those who never dared to get lost. You stop seeking wisdom in those who only repeat rules. Because your life was never meant to be an instruction manual. It's a map that you draw as you walk. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every detour, they're not proof that you failed. They're proof that you lived. And real growth doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from letting that pain become wisdom. Your own, not borrowed. So when someone says, I'm just trying to help, pause for a second. Feel the vibration behind those words. If it feels heavy, it's manipulation dressed as care. If it feels light, it's love disguised as challenge. Because love doesn't control. Love expands. And if you want to know who truly loves you, pay attention to who gets excited when you evolve. Manipulators feel threatened by your progress. Mentors feel inspired by it. The difference between the two? One wants to be right. The other wants you to be free. That's the kind of people you need around you. The ones who say, go, try, fall, rise, but make it yours. And if no one ever told you this before, hear it now. You don't owe anyone your obedience, but you do owe yourself your evolution. So be careful with advice, even the kind that sounds spiritual. Because manipulation wears many costumes. Sometimes it hides in religion, sometimes in friendship, sometimes in the mirror. But if you stay present, aware, and connected to your inner compass, you'll always know the difference. The body never lies. The soul always knows. So here's your reminder. When someone tells you how to live, listen, but filter. Ask, does this make me feel more alive? If not, thank them for sharing and walk away. Because your life deserves more than borrowed wisdom. It deserves your truth. Raw, unpolished, imperfect, but yours. That's the kind of authenticity that scares manipulators and inspires creators. That's what it means to wake up. So maybe it's time to stop following advice and start following awareness. Maybe that's how you finally stop surviving other people's lessons and start living your own purpose. And when you do, the world notices. Because nothing is louder than a human being who has decided to think for themselves. So if this message found you, it wasn't random. It's your wake-up call. They call it advice. Psychology calls it manipulation. But your soul just calls it time. Time to stop letting others narrate your story. Time to take back the pen. Time to write something no one's ever written before. You. If this hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Let's flood the algorithm with truth that heals, not noise that controls. Because the world doesn't change when people give advice. It changes when people wake up.